Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be exploring the digital backgrounds that define modern geopolitics, and I'm excited to be joined by Mr. Sean, who is a leading expert in global cybersecurity. Today we will talk about the cyber threats that South Korea faces from its neighbors and beyond, and discuss what these digital wars mean for its global standing. So, first, thank you for joining us. And would you mind just giving us a brief background about who you are and yourself and where you work at before we delve into the questions?
Yes, I've been in the tech industry for a long time. In the last 7 years, I delved into cybersecurity, where I ran several organizations in cybersecurity, including the threat research team. I eventually became the CEO of a company called Proofpoint, which is a leading cybersecurity company, roughly around $2 billion. We're probably in the top five cybersecurity companies in the world, and we defend against threats, companies against threats from all over the world. So I have good understanding of the global cybersecurity landscape.
Okay, thank you. And so in your role at Proofpoint, what would you say you saw as like the cybersecurity challenges that have changed in South Korea from different regions? So like how do these challenges in South Korea differ from other regions, and how would regional specificity impact global cybersecurity strategies?
A lot of cybersecurity really starts with the motive, and there are two motives that South Korea has, I would say, is a part of. And it's not unlike the United States. I think if you were to chart South Korea as a target, South Korea has become more of a target because South Korea itself has become more like the US, like the UK in a couple of different ways. The first is that South Korea, from an economic standpoint, has grown significantly. In fact, there's been very few countries, developed countries, with that level of GDP growth in the last 40 years. And what that means is South Korea then becomes a very wealthy, rich country, which is always a target for cyber criminals. The second motive is that South Korea is sort of in the nexus of a geopolitical war. South Korea, of course, is bordered to North Korea. North Korea is supported by many of the big actors in the cybersecurity world, and that is China, that's Russia. And so as a result, one of their modes of attacks have been through cybersecurity. So that's the second reason. The third reason is that South Korea is a high-tech hub. If you think about South Korea, what do you think about? You think about the Samsungs of the world, whether it's televisions, they have some of the best chip manufacturing in the world. In fact, all of the iPhones use Samsung chips. And so because of those three factors, in the last 30 years, South Korea has become a major target for cybersecurity players.
Right. And I've been talking a lot about the chaebols and the major conglomerates within South Korea and how they play a huge part in their economy. So what would you say, since there's such an intense cybersecurity environment, how can these major conglomerates kind of ensure that they're trusted by customers in managing their data and services securely when they're such a high target for cybersecurity threats?
That it's very dependent on the chaebol or the company itself, right? So if you look at this, there are different threats to different companies. So if you look at South Korea overall, if you're a government of South Korea, you're really trying to protect against intellectual property. If you're one of the chaebols, you're trying to protect against probably two major things. One is loss of money, because the cyber criminals' motives are that they go after money, right? And we can talk about that a bit later. And then the second piece, though, is secrets, right? I'd actually say, if I'd just take a step back here. If you look at the companies in South Korea, there's three major things. One is just the loss of financial loss. That happens, that's cybercrime. The second is the loss of intellectual property. So if you think about what they build, if you're a Hyundai as an example, you're building a connected car, you've got some proprietary information there that people want to steal. If you're Samsung, you're building some of the most advanced chipsets in the world, you're absolutely a target for intellectual property theft. And then the third is you have to protect your consumers' personal information because nothing hurts a company more than if they're known for not protecting your personal information. And since a lot of the chaebols cater to consumers across the globe, it's not just in South Korea. Um, People are driving Hyundais and Kias all over the world, and especially if you think about Hyundais and Kias as they go into the electric car realm, you're really driving a computer on wheels, and so therefore you're much more exposed to electronics, communication in general, which makes you more of a target for cyber threats. So those are the threats. How you go about protecting themselves is you have to become more of a sophisticated defender. South Korea over time will have to get to the level of sophistication some of the high-tech companies in America or some of the finance companies in America have adopted, and that is through really putting effort, money, investment into their cybersecurity programs.
Okay. And do you think that South Korea companies have been doing this in the past years, or do they have a lot of room for improvement, or are their strategies been pretty effective, or do you think they have a lot of room to improve?
I think it's a mixed bag, right? If you look at the adoption of cybersecurity in South Korea, while good, there's still ways to go, and that's true for some American companies as well, by the way, because cybersecurity is an ever-changing landscape. So in terms of uh, protecting, there's a couple of things that you have going in your favor. First, if you think about cybersecurity, you have to, there's really two motives for the actors that are coming after you. 95% of the bad actors go after money, right? And there are many, many groups, and there are professional actors. You go all the way from script kiddies, people who just want the quick hit, cause mischief, to people who are going after money. And those are cybercrime, major cybercrime actors. And you have groups, that's a job. For example, in Russia and China, you will have people come in and that's their 9 to 5 job is to go attack a particular state, go get money. 95% is based on money. The 5%, though, is based on actually stealing state secrets, right? So let me talk a little bit about the actors because I think that's important. One of the perpetrators in the world is North Korea. So North Koreans have built a pretty impressive cybercrime unit. Now, why is North Korea use cybersecurity? Well, in general, it is their quickest route to money. And if you think about North Korea, they don't really have any exports. They're not considered an advanced country. Yet, in 2022, their cybercrime activities netted them $2 billion worth of cash. And for North Korea, that's a lot of money to help all their other programs. So it's almost a national necessity for someone like a North Korea to have that. So that's a key piece. Now, North Korea also will get itself into state-sponsored attacks. So they'll go for intellectual property, dissidents. There's a famous incident about a decade ago where North Korean cyber hacks went and hacked Sony because they were releasing a film against Kim Jong-un. That's North Korean actors. So that's very much ingrained. They're known as national heroes. Who's their biggest rival? It's the South Koreans, right? And so they will consistently change tactics and methods to go after some of these South Korean actors. Now that's the first part. In terms of defending, one of the things that South Korea has a big advantage is they're a very educated population and a very technical population. And when you have a very educated and technical population, you can then repurpose some of those dollars and their focus to really focus on becoming good cybersecurity defenders. So that's a great asset to have to go defend South Korea.
Great. And you talked a lot about South Korea, and recently there's been a lot of developments with North Korea and South Korea's relationship in the cyberspace. Like, for example, South Korea has just joined some NATO agreements that are promoting better cybersecurity defense alliance. And so how do you kind of see this relationship or lack of relationship evolve in the coming decades with South Korea and North Korea, and then especially with the added pressure of the US-China tensions rising, where they're put in the middle because some of their industries are their large industries that come between those two countries. So how do you kind of see South Korea's relationship with these three or two major players and then North Korea evolve?
I think the it's going to make the cybersecurity threat more acute. There's no question because there are lines being drawn in the sand now, and you've got another superpower that has emerged over the last 10 years, which is China, right? Prior to that, it was really Russia and the US, and Russia was sort of waning, but China is in the world stage. And if you look at what China is doing across the world, is they're forming an alliance, much like the Americans and the British and the French did with NATO. You now have the Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians, and the rest of the world sees it that way. There are lines being drawn. And as a result, you're going to get more and more of allies on either side starting to follow a similar agenda, each of their own agendas. And some of the agenda, there's no question, China has been one of the big perpetrators of cyber attacks around the world. And their attacks are less, they're one of the few countries that are less financially based because they have a good economy. They're more state secret and intellectually property based, right? They want to steal Lockheed Martin's secrets and so on and so forth. And I think North Korea then gets gets drawn into the allyship with China, and South Korea will be a target, no question. So the problem is going to become worse for South Korea, not better.
Well, lots of interesting things to think about and talk about. And I know this is short, but thank you so much for your time. But just before we sign off, since you've had so much experience in cybersecurity, is there any final thoughts or just a key message you'd like to leave people, especially those who are navigating this world of cybersecurity, for the future?
Yeah, I mean, two thoughts, right? For anyone who wants to get into cybersecurity, it's a rich and growing field. It'll never go away. Unfortunately, there's always crime in the world, and cybersecurity is now the most convenient way to realize some of that crime. The second, I would say, is with cyber itself. It is a very it's a lovely, interesting place because it really deals with people's motives. And then there's techniques and pieces underneath that technofolks, etc. But as long as you can understand motives and then you can start to understand how people would achieve those motives, and you have a very, very strong um, I think, interest to defend and do the right thing. The outlook is bright.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Sean. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you, Ms. Matika.